Good evening and welcome to The Square. Tonight's discussion is going to focus on beauty pageants. Do they empower or objectify women? As you all know, Miss Rwanda 2019 is currently taking place, and the theme for this 7th edition of Miss Rwanda is beauty, brains, and culture. Tonight for this debate, we are joined by Miss Rwanda 2016, Jolie Mutesi. Thank you for honoring our invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We are also joined by Rwandan feminist activist, Olive Uomaria. Thank you for honoring our invitation.
Thank you for having me.
My name is Dan Mpisi. I am the host of The Square. I'm also joined here by my resident panelist, Charles Haber. Great to have you.
Same here. How are you, Dana?
Good. And also Ephraim Romwendi. Great to have you, Ephraim.
Thank you for having me.
We are also usually joined by Brenna Namata, who's a resident panelist of The Square, but unfortunately she's not here with us, but I'm sure wherever she is, she's watching the show. Now, before we begin the show, we'd just like to take a moment of silence for a very dear friend of ours who tragically passed away yesterday. Her name was Alexia Uwera Mupende. She was a model, an actress, and also the general manager of a sports facility called Waka Fitness. She will be dearly missed. Thank you very much. It's a sad way to start the year, I'm sure, for many of her friends and family. So we'll get on to the show. Today's show is about a very polarized debate. Most people think it objectifies women. Other people think it actually empowers women and creates more opportunities for them. And I'll start with my first question, which is to you, Jolie. It also applies to you, Olive, after we hear from Jolie. So you were Miss Rwanda 2016.
Sure.
And from what it seems this opportunity created very significant platforms for you. You went on to be the first contestant from Rwanda to enter the Miss World pageant.
Sure.
And also your work with youth and also insurance. You also raised insurance for 1,000 people in your district in your capacity as Miss Rwanda 2016. So you've done really significant work as a Miss, if I may say. Is the word Miss or Queen?
Oh, all could work.
All could work, yes.
Beauty queen.
Beauty queen,
sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that said, as a former contestant, I want to ask you, what do you say to people who critique such platforms and actually are of the view that it is a platform that objectifies and belittles women?
Thank you. In my own opinion, I believe that beauty pageants don't really objectify women, but rather glorify them. As in, we all know that exposure is so expensive, and beauty pageants give a platform to young women who have the ability in themselves or who think they can do something to the society. And once you are put on the limelight or you are exposed, I think it's a way of empowering you, because through the platform you can reach out to very many people, you can do a lot of things. So when it comes to objectification...
So it should be celebrating the diversities that we have in Rwanda, but also across the world. For me, I see that it's really discriminative, because if you don't fit in a certain box, if you don't look a certain way, then you will not be able to be part of that platform. So for me, I feel it sends a wrong image to what we define as beauty as people, because every sort of beauty should be celebrated. And one other thing, I feel that there are people out there also living with disabilities. We've never seen people, especially women, that are given that opportunity to be able to run and contest if they have disabilities. So for me, it is a huge problem and sends a wrong image to young women and young girls who feel they're growing up and they're realizing, you know what, I'm not tall enough, I'm not skinny enough, and therefore I'm not beautiful enough. And so whenever we see that, being put out there in the entertainment, that is how we are defining beauty. But that's not what African beauty is about. That is not what we should be celebrating generally.
So, Rwanda is known for its homegrown solutions. We kind of tailor and contextualize a lot of things, from policies to what have you. When it comes to this sort of platform, what would you rather, what scenario would you actually envision based on your critique?
I do understand we have to compete internationally, but I also feel as Rwanda, if we are able to define what kinds of solutions, what kind of ideas, opportunities we want to see for our people, then what is the problem with this? Why are we not defining it in that certain way as well? Why are we not celebrating beauty in Rwanda in a way that looks at, the diversities of women and also men. As far as I know, this is not, a platform where men feel are welcome. So for me, it goes back again to objectifying women. We feel for time immemorial, we knew that brains and beauty are not mutually exclusive. They're mutually exclusive, but now we know you can be beautiful, but you can also have a brain. But at the same time, for me, I feel I want to see these women and also our country really promoting what the brains that are out there. What are these women able to do to bring about change in the community? What are they able to do to really push for their opportunities and be able to excel in their careers? So for me, I do not want to celebrate beauty only. I want to celebrate knowledge, skills, and intellectuals of these women. And I don't feel that is something that we are celebrating enough.
But I think, don't you think that in some of these pageants you have really smart women who are also beautiful or conform to this particular standard?
They're very much beautiful.
Very eloquent, very smart, and actually have the capacity to do a lot.
I agree, but when you look at what we are looking at, majority of the time it's really about what they look like. Just a few days ago, something was circulating on WhatsApp when one of the contestants was unable to talk about which district she comes from. And honestly, people were laughing about her. And when you look at, yes, we are looking at how they're able to articulate themselves, but people don't see that. People are only looking at what they look like, and they're judging them according to how they look. So at the end of the day, the public, the viewers are also contributing. I mean, that's the society we live in, where women are judged on the basis of how they look. But for me, we as a country, we are past that. We have smart women. We have women that are in politics, in science. This is what we should be celebrating. And again, it goes back to how this particular pageant started. It started from the Western world. It started in the 50s, where women were known as housewives. And it is still the same. It's only that recently we started throwing in a bit of, okay, let's hear what they have to say for themselves. But it's still largely driven by how you look. And for me, I feel that's problematic.
Charlie,
I think there's a problem with that.
Can she just rebut what?
Obviously, because each time she speaks, because she's very beautiful, I'd like to listen. So,
Can you just,
I think, picking from what Olive has just said, talking about beauty and all those things, I think beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. So, and when you talked about beauty and you said that given the fact that there is beauty in beauty pageants, objectifies women, to me, beauty is one of the parameters that is based on in beauty pageants, but it's not the main parameter. And if I take an example of Miss Rwanda, I think beauty takes 30% of the total score, and there is much more to beauty. You need to have, the content is judged out of 40%. There is eloquency, there is content, there is the way you articulate your things in front of the public. So when you talked about beauty and being the main issue that makes beauty pageants objectify women, I don't think I really agree with you.
So that's where I go back to the diversity part. If beauty is 30%, then why is it that you have to be a certain age, a certain height? You have to be we have to have a certain look for you to be able to be accepted.
But I think
I might not be accepted because, well, I'm not skinny and tall and whatnot.
But it's the same thing in universities. So take for example, in the institutions that you say are intellectual drivers, or at least in this context, that measure intellect, which is in measuring brains, universities, they still have an entry level. Not everyone just goes to university and enters. There's a pass rate you go through. So I think, for me, my question more than anything is, I genuinely don't believe, okay, so the definition of objectivity is when you dehumanize someone in this context, right? Where you look at somebody for only what they have on the outside and they don't become a person, or you can't relate to them in that manner. And obviously there are undertones of that, but I don't think the underlying base of Miss Rwanda or any beauty pageant in our country is that.
But do you agree that it doesn't celebrate diversity?
Okay, so what is diversity?
Diversity is, we have different thoughts, opinions, looks,
but you know,
appearances,
but that
just basing on
that is not on the basis of the pageant itself. It's on the basis of the judges, or at least the way we do the scoring.
No, I think the standards and the rules apply worldwide, because this is a world competition, and then you are supposed to adhere to the standards that they are given. And so that's
And there's
for me
a
where I
reason
find
behind
this.
that.
I do agree.
Every competition, Olive, has to have an entry level. If we are going to have under 18 basketball players competing to go for the World Cup, they will say these players ought to have been born between this time and this time. If we are going to have CHAN, which is the African homemade soccer competition for home-based players, they will say that player has to be playing in a club in his own country. And we can give a million examples until the cows come home. The rules of Miss Rwanda, it is just logical that that many or most or probably all, I'm not aware, will align as much as possible to prepare the pageants for a continental and a global stage.
That's
it's just
what-
logical. Those are the rules of the
That's
game.
what I said from the beginning. Those are the rules of the games, and I
Yes.
understand. But the problem is where this particular pageant started and what it represented at the time. And unfortunately, it has never evolved. It has only evolved to throw in a little bit of intellect. Yeah, let's listen to what women have to say. But at the end of the day, it is still based on what the Western world views as beautiful. And by the way, when you look at an average woman in Africa, she doesn't look tall, skinny, the same way the Western world defines beauty. And so for me, that's what I find problematic. And the homegrown solutions that you mentioned is, yes, we can borrow what works and what doesn't. But for me, I feel what we need to emphasize more on is what kind of knowledge are these women have? Where do they want to be? Not what they look like.
So
and again, the diversity.
basically what you're saying, would you envision in the future a Miss Rwanda whereby size is not limited to that standardized international model? One. Number two, you'd like to see a Miss Rwanda where there are people with disabilities who actually contest. Basically a Miss Rwanda based on the things that you're saying.
So
that is what you'd like to envision.
Completely.
That is what you'd like to see.
As a
I think
feminist,
we would
I
call it a
believe in
different name,
beauty
yes.
as well. I celebrate beauty. I love makeup and all that stuff. I love that as well. But at the same time, I do believe that there's more to women than how they look. And unfortunately, that is how the contest, the pageant appears.
I'd like to just pick up on what you said, Charles.
Yes.
You think if that scenario happened, it would be a different name. It wouldn't be Miss
No,
Rwanda.
it would have a very good name for it, Miss Made in Rwanda.
Yeah,
she also-
something
Yes,
that we
yes,
make.
We have Miss
Something
Made in
of
Rwanda,
ours. How
and then we have
about
two totally different pageants a year.
But then
Yes,
the
and-
question now, and this is why I feel like you guys are saying the same thing towards the same end. The question is, does that criteria or that rule list that says a woman has to be X, Y, and Z to qualify to compete in Miss Rwanda, does that mean that we're objectifying her through that? Then I think that's the question that we're not addressing. I think for me, I genuinely don't believe that the two are mutually exclusive. And
The
I
two
know,
being what?
No, you're funny. Objectification and empowerment, and I'll explain. When you look at empowerment from a macro perspective, you could say that yes, if we are objectifying someone, we are not empowering them. But when you look at the impact, and she mentioned exposure in the beginning, when you look at the impact this Miss Rwanda has on the people who compete in it, on their personal lives, it does empower them in some manner. You talked about them going through training, learning how to be eloquent, speaking skills, etc., etc. In some cases, obviously, it erodes confidence because these ladies go through the worst in terms of the public eye and what they say about them. But I genuinely do believe that, to a certain degree, on a minor level, or at least on an individual basis, these ladies get empowered. So I don't want us to say, if a lady is objectified or the rules objectify a woman, then she's not being empowered.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I do believe that these women are using the platform to be somebody. And I agree with that, and I love that. The question is, look at the departing point itself. The pageant itself is sexist. It originated in a time that was sexist. And so we cannot ignore that past. And at the end of the day, for me, I feel you cannot talk about empowerment and objectification at the same time. It is impossible. Something that is empowering cannot be objectifying at the same time. Something has to be empowering. If it is objectifying, then it is dehumanizing you, as you were saying. It is taking away some parts of you. And that is what the world looks at women. The world does not want a woman to speak. The world wants a woman to just appear beautiful, to look beautiful.
I disagree, Oli. No, I
that is the world we live in, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yes, today things are changing. Things are changing, but at the same time, that's what I feel. If you want to celebrate beauty, let us look at all aspects of beauty. Let's not define beauty from a particular way. What about all these young women that are growing up realizing, you know what? My height is not the same. What does that mean? What kind of self-esteem are we building into these young women? Especially, we know so many women that have eating disorders because they want to be small, because they want to be skinny. So what kind of image are we portraying in terms of what we believe as empowering young women?
But we shouldn't also demonize. We shouldn't also demonize the ladies who are beautiful and tall.
And we shouldn't.
And
No.
and I think also there's also
Actually,
a
just to build
certain
on
level
your
of
points.
hypocrisy. There's a certain level of hypocrisy on the side of saying we want to empower women, but we want to tell them what they should compete in and what they shouldn't compete in.
No, we are just saying open up the opportunities for everybody. That is as simple as that.
I just
Because
have
if
a-
I'm short and I'm unable to compete, why? Does it mean I'm not beautiful?
You can become a
Every
good
year-
long jumper. You can
No,
go
that's
and-
true. But every year, I am raising a daughter.
You can
Let me
become
tell
very
you,
good at short
I am
put.
raising a daughter.
You have-
Every year
yeah.
she watches TV, she realizes what we call beautiful is somebody that is tall, that is skinny, that looks a certain way. So what does that mean for her self-esteem? Just explain it to me. And how am I going to explain to her that she is beautiful enough when she sees what is celebrated in the media is a certain look? It is impossible to be able to
Yeah.
adhere.
As I said earlier,
It-
sorry, Jolie, if I may. My biggest disagreement with Olive is that she has made the beauty pageant appear as if it's the only way in which we celebrate women.
Sure.
Whereas that's not the case. That is the only platform in which we celebrate just a portion of women's beauty.
Where do we celebrate the rest?
Who are women
have
to be
women.
celebrated?
Look
But there's
at Diana
miscongeniality.
Yes.
You're objectifying me with that comment.
in the media space, in the sports space.
But there are also other
in the-
platforms.
yeah, in
There's
the-
miscongeniality,
Yes.
there's tourism, there are different platforms. There's Miss
Exactly.
Earth,
But they do
there's
not carry the
Supernational.
word of beauty and mostly queens, you know, as she mentioned. We are already defining these other platforms based on other things.
But
Yes.
there's also a mistake. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I really apologize.
It's all right.
It's also us putting beauty on a pedestal in society. That if it's a beauty pageant that is the most important, that we want our girls to know that being beautiful is more important than being smart. What I'm saying is that once we say that you don't necessarily have to aspire to be the most beautiful girl, you don't have to feel like the most beautiful girl for you to find self-worth, that's when we'll start to solve the issues. Because when we say that, no, we need to make it inclusive, that having a beauty pageant is the cause of the problem, is actually counterintuitive. We should say we need to remove beauty as the measure of self-worth for women, as a start. So now when we start to talk about it from that angle, then we now start to say, okay, you as a young lady, you may not qualify for Miss Rwanda because of X, Y, and Z. But that doesn't mean you're not as equally capable or good or valued in society if your place is maybe Miss Geek.
But do you think that's the case today?
My point is, I'm not necessarily saying that is the case or that's not the case. What I'm trying to say is that in this conversation, we are emphasizing that beauty seems to be the highest rank of self-worth for women in society. We need to start to redefine that.
I agree.
Yeah.
Jolie, I want your take on this before we move to the next question. As a Miss Rwanda, did you feel objectified? Did you feel there was something taken from you? What's your personal experience from this?
Actually, objectification depends on an individual. I'm not going to be such an extremist that I will tell you that beauty pageants only glorify or empower women. Just like any other platform that gives you an exposure or puts you in the limelight, it has advantages and disadvantages. So now, something to do with objectification depends on you as an individual, on how you plan to use the platform. If you are given the crown and maybe you are crowned Miss Rwanda, then you do contrary, and tomorrow people are going to throw trash to you on social media platforms, then it's you as an individual that has problems or issues, not the entire platform. So I never felt objectified simply because I used my platform in the right way. And I didn't really welcome room for people to objectify me or maybe to use me in other things they wanted to do.
So while we're... Sorry, Charles, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to Jolie tickled my mind when she talked about objectification is a personal like perception. I
yes.
think that's what she actually meant. And I do hope that in the boot camps they prepare the ladies to understand that they are not being objectified. Because yes,
this is my next question.
I'm hoping they do. Because that's the whole rationale of the boot camp, preparing you not only for the finale, but for what you're going to go through, and also giving you other life skills. Some of the things that these ladies, the projects they present, and Olive mentioned something that I think is missing in the whole Miss Rwanda thing, that the winner and the two runners-up and how that happens is given so much weight beyond the projects. So if we could probably give a lot of coverage and importance to the projects, then the conversation that we're having here might change.
Now this is my next question.
Yes.
My next question is that, and you're right, Charles, after the Miss Rwanda finishes, we know the first 3 runners-up and the winner. We don't know what happens in terms of the work they do. I know it's publicized to a certain degree, but my question for you, Jolene, if you can shed light on this, we want to know the impact of the activities or the initiatives Miss Rwanda winners that they get up to. If you can give us a few concrete examples, because we feel like once you have the crown, once you have the the gifts or whatever it is they facilitate, it ends there. But there's work that they go on and do for a year. Can you give us a few concrete examples of maybe the last 3 previous Miss Rwandas and the work they've done and the impact it has had in communities in this country?
During the entire process of the contest, the contestants represent different projects that they will, if you happen to be crowned, then you promise to the people, if I happen to be crowned Miss Rwanda, blah, blah, this is what I'm going to do to the public, and if I'm entrusted with the responsibilities, this is what I'm going to deliver to the people. So, and there are a few of the things, actually not few, but very many, let me start for myself as a person who is a winner of 2016. I think today, if I was not given the exposure or been given the opportunity to be the title owner, to be the title holder of Miss Rwanda 2016, I believe there is a lot in me that would have remained dead. But through the platform, through the exposure, I think I worked with Bank to to people in Karongi, and today I'm running an annual project called Intergeneration Dialogue. There is mainly a link between the old and young generation to bring the old and young generation and share ideas. I started it as an inspiration from the liberation process. The birth of the idea of patriotism and liberating our country started from people who were very young. And having looked at the generation today, we seem to maybe ignore and say that belongs to the older generation. Someone who, as an opinion leader, I can say, as someone that has big followers that are going to follow to my opinions and maybe look at me as a role model. That was a very good platform to me. And I believe that Miss Rwanda does not give opportunities to only the title holders, but even also these other girls that come to the top 15. Let us take an example of Edwige, was one of the contestants in 2016. She now built a library in the southern province. Look at Peace Kwizera, my first runners-up. She's doing career guidance. She has written books for young children. Look at Sharifa Umuhoza, she's my 4th runners-up. She has brought together girls that had early pregnancies and dropped out of school, and she brought them together to console them and give them hope for life. And maybe let us look at Elsa. She's doing a project of cataract surgery with Kabgai Hospital. When you look at Liliane, that is doing a campaign against malnutrition. So those are some of the impacts that the girls or the title holders of Miss Rwanda are giving back to the society. Which any other platform will you tell me that an 18 or 19-year-old girl is going to have as big as Miss Rwanda? To the community, look at all these things and ignore some of the few parts where you will see a girl that is going to use the exposure in a bad way and maybe engage herself in other activities and start blaming the whole platform. Sure.
And it is. And I want to just ask you, If you can just give us an example of Miss Rwanda, what is the process in a nutshell? You know, from beginning to end. How do you select? How do they go through the districts? How? Yes.
So Miss Rwanda is mainly about three things, and that is beauty, brains, and culture. So, of course, like you said, there are criteria. You have to have a certain height. I know you're going to attack me from that angle, but it's okay. That is equivalent to 1.70, then Rwandese by nationality, and be willing to be in the country in a period of 1 year when you're reigning. Then it is just put open and public to the people. If you know you have all those criteria, there is no one that is told that if you're brown or black or extremely beautiful that you have to come. It is up to you to feel confident and have that self-esteem for you to join the contest. Yeah.
Do they require a certain weight and height? You say height.
Yeah, sure.
So
Yeah,
weight.
the weight is there. 'Cause, you know, we are now branding the country on the international scene. So you're not going to come with maybe 80 kilograms and think you're going to be a beauty queen. So your question rises.
Which again goes back to my point about, honestly, it's an international defined standard of beauty. It is not a Rwandan type of beauty. And I keep hearing people say, oh, this one has hips, she will not make it. You know, why? Because Rwandans have hips. But unfortunately, we will not make it because that's...
We have beauty queens with hips that have made it to beauty... To
an international standard.
Sure.
Okay, great. I just wanted to go back to that point around objectification. Objectification is not personal. It is a systemic issue. It is a cultural issue. And so how you react to it, it is personal. But it's already become a systemic issue. Women for thousands of years have been known as, you know, you have to be looking a certain way. We don't care if you can talk. You know, we don't care what you have in your brain. You know, as long as you look good. And so that is how the world has evolved. Today we are not talking about that anymore. But we are still talking about how the public views women. We see a lot of that in the media. How women are told, you know, if you look a certain way, if you are almost naked, that's when you are accepted. And so, and that's also what happens also in the Miss world. And I know the bikini session is very, very controversial. Why are we parading women in, you know, skinny bikinis to be able to determine whether they're beautiful or not? And so for me, it goes beyond what you perceive it as personal, you know, how you take it. It is also a cultural issue. It's how society views people. And also most of the time, nobody cares how she can articulate herself, you know, especially the viewers. What they care about is how she looks like, and that's what we vote. We vote because she's beautiful or because we know her. We don't vote because she's intellectual or she's intelligent. And
that's where the judges come in.
There you go.
Actually, we have a tweet on a very interesting tweet. Not now. We're not going to read the tweets now. But I saw earlier on a tweet from someone, and it was. I'm interested to read it. But just very quickly, and just still to do with the Miss Rwanda process. What happens to the reigning queens? Like, how are they facilitated once you're crowned? What facilitation do you have? Do you have salary? I know there's a car. Do you have mentorship? Like, what happens to you in that 1 year that guides you in actually implementing everything that you promised you do?
Can you financially survive by being a Miss Rwanda?
Absolutely, yes. You financially survive given the fact that when you are crowned, you are Cogebank's brand ambassador and you are given a salary of about $1,000.
What?
$1,000 US. So per month.
You're wondering whether it's not too much.
I need to consider.
And then, so that implies that financially one can survive. It is not, just like I said earlier, it is not any platform that can give. You're done with your high school and your first salary is $1,000 US. And throughout the whole year, you have mentors. We have matrons, you have your friends, and then you as a person, you know, there is much more of responsibility that comes to the crown that makes you you mature very early. So you know the responsibilities make you. You want to break through. You want to break the boundaries to also deliver to the people and execute the duties that you are entrusted with the public.
My last question before we go to a Twitter feed is to do with culture. This has been very controversial. Umucho, Miss Rwanda, culture is a significant aspect of Miss Rwanda. And this year's theme, and I don't know about last year, but this year's theme is beauty, brains, and culture. But based on public commentary, people have questioned the cultural significance of Miss Rwanda. Number one, the elements of, like you said, skimpy outfits. Although I know in Rwanda, we don't do bikinis on the catwalk and what have you. But what would you say, Jolly, is the cultural aspect of Miss Rwanda? Where is the Rwandan culture integrated in this platform?
We have the cultural dances. If you have ever followed the live sessions of the whole process, you are taught, like me in person, when I joined Miss Rwanda platform, I grew up from Uganda and all those things. So when I came, I didn't really know how to dance the amarava, the cultural dances. But it's one of the benefits that I got from Miss Rwanda. You are taught because it's your identity. If you even happen to go to the international beauty pageants, if you look at Lilian, she showcased Rwandan culture. So that is the bit of the aspect that is there.
Olive, what do you have to say about the culture? Are you in agreement, or you think it doesn't exist?
I think, this is my honest opinion, I think we are justifying something by making it culturally relevant, by bringing in those aspects that are, culturally relevant for us. And that's great, Let's just integrate what we feel is culturally right. But at the same time, for me, the platform is problematic. So at the end of the day, again, if we're talking about culture, our culture also celebrates the diversities that we have. Again, it goes back to what I said. What is the ground where we are working on? What exactly do we see that? Only a certain amount of people are allowed to get into that. And so as much as I do agree, yes, let's make it Rwandan, but at the end of the day, for me, it makes no difference.
Ephraim, Charles, do you feel like there's a cultural significance to this platform?
Two things. One, in 2012, I was lucky enough to host Miss Rwanda that year. So I had two experiences. One, I visited the girls in the boot camp on 2 or 3 different occasions. And then, of course, I handled the finale. On the culture aspect, there's quite a lot of teachings that are actually done during the boot camps. But also, there's a session I think they have where they change attire and they dance, and beyond that, and that I think covers as much as it does. But I want to talk about my experience versus the allusion Olive had towards objectification. You should see what happens behind the scenes when these girls really want feedback on how they performed. They really want to know, they come to you and tell you, how can I do better? How did I express myself? How can I express myself like you? How can I, the urge to actually compete and stand out is extremely good. And to me, that's really humbling that young girls want to stand out, especially in terms of how they present themselves.
And I think that's great, and I think that's where we need to put more efforts into. Know how they need to walk, or present themselves, or smile, but articulate themselves. And that's what I said. If you are unable to say which district you come from, honestly, have you been prepared? Are you knowledgeable enough about the current affairs? And whatever, every year we see people trying to get loopholes into the kind of answers these girls are giving. And most of the time we are laughing at them. Why? Because we feel, she's beautiful, but nothing is going on upstairs. And so for me, that's what I want to see. I want to see more emphasis in how they're able to present their personal brand and develop themselves as individuals. That's what I want to see. Because those are the skills you're going to need out there. Beauty is not a skill. It is not a skill that's going to get you out there. Yeah, it's going to get you paid.
It's an asset.
That's great. It is an asset. But this is what we are trying, and feminism, this is what we're trying to do. Women, it's not just about what they look like. It's about competing out there. It's about being able to articulate yourself. It's about being able to get somewhere as a person. And And so for me, that's where I want to see more of.
More of. So we're going to just quickly, Ephraim, is there something you wanted to add before we go to the break? Your facial expressions are very interesting.
So many things I want to add.
Can you be brief? 30 seconds before we go to the break.
Okay, it's okay, we can go to the break.
We'll be back after the break. Please stay tuned. We're here discussing Miss Rwanda and beauty pageants. Do they objectify or empower women? Stay tuned. We'll be back right after the break.
ubuzima ni ingenzi kandi ubuzima ni urugendo ufite ubuzima nta cyiza atageraho iyo urwaye utakaza byinshi birimo umwanya umara urwaye igihe cyo kwivuza utaretse n'ubushobozi uryamye aha ntaba arimo kwiteza imbere nyamara ubuzima burarindwa burabungabungwa yewe buranasigasirwa ibyo byose biterwa n'agaciro k'ibyo urya n'imyitozo ngororamubiri ukora inzira ni iyi rero ikiganiro cyacu kidufasha gusobanukirwa indwara zitandukanye ndetse no kuzirinda abaganga batandukanye b'inzobere tuzababagereraho badusangiza ubunararibonye bafite indwara zose mudasobanukirwa uru ni rwo rubuga inama zitandukanye ku mirire n'imyifatire niyo ntego y'ikiganiro buri gihe intero izahora ari yayindi menya wirinde
Welcome back to tonight's edition of The Square. We're here discussing beauty pageants and whether they actually empower or objectify women. And we're also looking at Miss Rwanda 2019. Joining us is Jolly Mutesi, Miss Rwanda 2016. And we're also joined by Rwandan feminist activist Olive Uwamaria. But before we go to our tweets, I would like to hear from Ephraim, who had some points he wanted to make before the break. But Ephraim, I know there are many, but if you can narrow down.
Summarize,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I need to do something that's very tough. But,
yes.
Okay, so, you know, I really agree with Olive. No, there's no but. I really agree with Olive. I think for me, and I'll come back to what I said earlier, if we can redefine the standard of worth for women in society, then we will start to be making progress. We will start to make progress. And I think even this conversation of objectification, empowerment will be thrown out of the way. Because I genuinely believe that let Miss Rwanda be Miss Rwanda. And he said it. Let the criteria, let them remain. But let's find other ways to celebrate things that also celebrate other aspects of women. And we talked about all those other platforms that celebrate women. And I think, for me, the understanding is that's number one. Now, when it comes to the aspect of culture, you know, it gets very hard to understand what aspect of culture are we trying to debate as being present and part of Miss Rwanda. Is it teaching the ladies about culture? Is it using the platform to showcase culture? Because at the end of the day, when you look at it, there are many aspects of it. But then somebody brought up a very important point about using vernacular to articulate yourself. If we're going to talk about culture, that's a key aspect of our culture. But then the question is, why don't we allow the freedom for somebody to choose the language?
They actually have the freedom.
They have the freedom.
So why do they insist on in a language that most times they're not comfortable with?
Why is it? Is there emphasis that speaking English?
They are very free to use one language. If you want to use Kinyarwanda, you are given freedom to use Kinyarwanda. If you want to use English,
I think the organizers should emphasize in boot camp. You know, when they're asking questions and training you, and they can see these girls are struggling in Kinyarwanda, in English or French, they should tell them right for boot camp, you know what, if you want to win, stick to a language you're comfortable with. Because the Miss Rwandas we've seen, there's always a struggle, and we wonder, are they forced to speak a language they're not comfortable with? So I think the organizers should insist on focusing on language you're comfortable with.
And I think that's what, in the boot camp, they probably focus on more things than others. They really don't focus on how are you able to articulate yourself, express yourself.
I don't think that's the reason. And
then why are they really struggling every time? And we see that every year.
The reason is because every contestant has hopes of being the winner.
And the winner speaks what? English.
And the winner will not go to Los Angeles
they can train they can train them after for like 2 months an English course, something. But at least during the Miss, because Miss Rwanda is for Rwandan audiences, and we vote for people who are very comfortable and confident. So I think after winning the ring, they can deal with that.
Maybe they should be taught to aim for the bronze and speak
Kinyarwanda. But I'll be very frank. I think we need the fundamental issue: objectification or not, empowerment or not. We need to celebrate other aspects of women and elevate other aspects as sources of self-worth for women. So a woman doesn't necessarily have to feel, I have to be X tall or this weight or size for me to feel like I am the most beautiful person or the most valued person of society. It's okay for somebody to be better than you at X. I mean, and that's what we should allow. And that's why I would disagree with the diversity aspect. I'm like, at the end of the day, let Miss Rwanda be Miss Rwanda, but let us move away from using that as the yardstick to measure our young girls. Because I'll say this, I have young cousins, and these are young girls, and they would wear, because obviously being young, they would cut their hair. These are very small girls. They would wear like t-shirts on their head, and then they'll come and they'll be Miss. And then we as a family would entertain it, but then what about encouraging them to come and maybe be eloquent and give us a speech as a politician, or give us strategize a business plan, stuff like that, where they try to sell something.
So the creators is really, what about anyone else that does not fall into that beauty standard? What happens to the young girls? I'm more concerned with the future generation. I am more concerned with my daughter and what she perceives as beautiful. I mean, I'm happy that I embrace diversity. I am happy that I will tell her every day that she's beautiful no matter what. But at the end of the day, look at so many young girls that don't have that opportunity.
But
what
it's because we have
becomes of that?
But it's because we've tied beauty. We've made beauty such and I'm saying this on the basis that the reality of life, we have to accept this, is that one, she said it, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. So whether a judge and Miss Rwanda,
it is not. If you've already defined what beauty is like, it's no longer in the eyes.
No, my point is that what responsibility are you putting on society to make sure that everybody feels beautiful? I feel like that's an unfair responsibility that you put on society, because the fact of the matter is, it's not going to change 20 years from now, 50 years from now.
Very quickly. We can stay here for another 2 hours on the square. But I think we're
celebrating. There are very many avenues where we're celebrating women.
Yes.
So Miss Rwanda does not even rank number 9 on my 10 list. I think that is like number 12.
As Charlie, but let's look at the size of them.
First of all, we need to understand that Miss Rwanda as a beauty pageant is just one of the zillion forms of entertainment that we have.
But what about the resources that go into it?
Can we go to a special feed?
Corporate decision.
Yes, let's go into a Twitter feed. Yeah, so we have our first tweet is from someone called Romeo, and Romeo's tweet is quite interesting because Romeo tells us that men should be the ones to judge women's beauty, but Miss Rwanda judges are always full of women somehow. Yeah, well, I don't even know what to say to you, Romeo.
I don't know. I think let's ask Jolie about that.
I think that's going back to who defines who is beautiful. Because we are parading women because they're there to be objectified by men, because beauty is there for men to enjoy. And I think that's what Romeo is trying to say, and I completely disagree with that.
Charles, is there something you wanted to say about Romeo?
She's disarmed me. Olive just
I genuinely, I'll keep saying this. And I asked Charlie a question before we went to the tweet, coming back to this thing of men.
Yeah.
When it comes down to also the corporate's decision to invest money in some of these things, you know, who are the ones making the decision to say that we want to align our brand with a beauty pageant versus Miss Geek or a Miss, and that's where we need to, coming back to this question of men being the judge of beauty, it becomes a thing where it's almost, because we feel like that is, men are the gatekeepers of women in society to a certain degree, that even when it comes down to these things, it continues to perpetrate, or it continues to foster this kind of belief.
So our next tweet is from Larian, and Larian says that Miss Rwanda is promoting beauty at an international level. So obviously the criteria are based on the international level. I disagree in what our feminist guests say, because in other countries there's competition like Miss Petite Taille, which is only for short ladies.
So why is it not here? Why is that?
Why isn't that category?
Why is it not being given the same limelight and exposure the same way we are doing it to this?
I'm sure it evolves. It evolves. You know, whoever is in charge might listen. But I think I like that one.
Jolie, what do you have to say to that in terms of what our person said, that there actually are other competitions that are not?
It could be a very good project.
You think it would work in Rwanda?
It could be a very good project to be thought about.
Okay. Our next tweet is from Shema, and Shema's tweet says that beauty pageants can offer a lot of benefits to contestants who are savvy enough to take advantage of them. However, to each their own. If you don't like them or have qualms about them, don't participate in them.
Shut off your TV, Olive, when we're watching Miss Rwanda. We'll be happy.
No,
with
but let me.
It's the same argument as if you don't want to be raped, don't go out at night.
Yeah.
It's the same argument, which is really flawed.
I disagree. Yeah, I disagree. I would say like you cannot. She talked about it. Like the issue of objectification is not. It's not a personal issue. We're talking about this is a societal issue. We talk about the safety of women in society. We talk about how our young brothers perceive women and perceive relationships with women, and this perpetuates stuff like rape culture. I don't know if you heard about R. Kelly and what has come through, and that is coming from another place where comes from this whole conversation of objectivity. Now, I genuinely believe that it is not one of those things where you say switch off TV. I genuinely believe we need to start to fundamentally discuss as a society what we hold women, what we value women based on. I understand beauty is number one, but we can find ways to balance that out.
Let's go to our last tweet for this evening. Our last tweet for this evening is from Mercy, and Mercy's tweet says that this is a multi-billion-dollar question. Beauty pageants objectify women because what matters is the physical appearance, height, beauty, and other similar parameters, whereas things like confidence and mind ability are sometimes ignored, hence objectifying women.
But who says objectifying? And I feel like I'm talking too much, but I need to say this. Who says that objectifying? Who says that a lady's physical appearance is inhuman? When you say a woman is beautiful, does that mean you've automatically objectified her? No. It's when you dehumanize her to the point where it's like all you can see is this, which I feel like it's not the complete picture. So I don't think jumping straight to saying that it objectifies is right. I think objectification it's a much deeper conversation.
It's nuanced, so to speak.
Exactly.
We have come to the end of our show. Unfortunately, I would like us to give closing remarks. I'll start with my resident panelists. Charles, I'll start with you and Ephraim before we go to our guests.
The Almighty God blessed Rwandans with beauty. Much more beauty than very many other people that come from different parts of the world do not have. Let's celebrate that beauty. I rest my case.
Okay. Ephraim, closing remarks?
Beauty is not the highest standard of measure for women in society, and we need to start to talk about that.
Interesting. Closing remarks? Olive?
Let's raise young women to know that there's more to their lives than their physical appearance. Women are smart, and so that is what we need to celebrate.
Thank you. Jolie, closing remarks?
My closing remarks would be beauty is an added value that we need to celebrate, but brings more to it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's been a very interesting debate. My closing remarks, I think my job here is to make sure you guys all give closing remarks. Next time I'll give them. But thank you very much for joining us on this discussion on beauty pageants and whether they objectify or empower women. Thank you very much to our guests, Olive and Jolie, and to my resident panelists, Charlie and Ephraim. Always a pleasure having you. I'd also like to take this time to thank our partners, Uzi Collections and Bourbon Coffee. Please keep the conversation going using our hashtag, #TheSquareRW. Have a good evening.
n'ibintu bya fashion hano bihurira mu by'ukuri ubusanzwe Bertrand umuntu ukunda kugaragara neza
King na modeling King ni umumodo so I'm a model and personal trainer byose mbikora icyarimwe
bamwe bari bazi ko ngo kungufunga ari wa mukino ngo ugasanga ngo umuntu ngo ngarakomeye ngaravunagura ibintu
L'aventure continue chaque dimanche 17h et jeudi 18h sur RTV. C'est comme avant, mais avec plus. Plus d'inspiration.
Ne pas reporter à demain ce qu'on doit faire là maintenant.
Plus de motivation.
Gardez le cap.
D'accord.
Plus de parcours hors du commun.
44 ans à faire ce que vous aimez.
Plus de souvenirs.
C'est le jour où j'ai retrouvé mon frère, je pensais qu'il était mort.
Plus de fun.
It's just a dance. Ça peut être comme ça.
Plus de secrets.
Non, je suis un horrible cuisse.
Plus de défis.
Ah, vous avez dit oui.
Je l'ai dit.
Plus de divertissement. Plus de découvertes.
Pas seulement être survivant et victime.
Plus de personnalités au parcours inspirant qui se dévoilent. Ne ratez pas le miroir chaque semaine sur Rwanda TV et tous les jours sur les réseaux sociaux.
Jonathan, non ndabitegetse none ndashaka kubaza hano imbere yanjye none.
Bakumvuga agira ngo uri umuntu. Menya ko ubabonwa nuhagaze di.
Ngo n'umwanzuro nafashe. Nze. Ntaho tukagenda.
No. Indenda.
3. Afari kusameza sikiri.
Wabisha kutabisha kugomba kunsobanurira.
Ibibazo bireta tuteze. Fata umwanzuro ariko bizakurikira si bizamaze.